Hope everyone's doing well tonight. It's good to see everybody here. Everybody's always lively. I like that. Before we get started, I've asked our brother Keith to lead us in a word of prayer.
Our Father in heaven, we come to that before you, thanking you so much for everything you've blessed us with. Thank you for this day. Thank you for our health. We ask that you continue to be with us, keep us safe, and keep us healthy. We pray for the ones in this congregation that don't have their health right now. We pray that you'll be with them and be with the doctors that will helping them. Be with their families at home too. We ask you to be with Gerald tonight as we look tonight in the Word. We pray that we'll make applications in our life when needed. Father, please go through this life with us and give us the home that you have. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen. Thank you, Keith. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. We have a nice section to get in tonight. It's going to be a section where there's going to be some discussion and some thought on a particular topic. And so, as we're going through that, let's all be open to each other. I know there are going to be kind of different opinions on some of the ideas. And so it's going to be good. It'll be a good discussion for us, and I'm looking forward to it. So, verse 11, jumping right in, he says, "Our mouth has spoken freely to you, O Corinthians. Our heart is open wide." And so, previously here, he's telling them that they've got to endure. And we went through 4 sections here: the physical, the spiritual, and then how they're perceived in the world. And he tells them they do all these things. This is their reward. And then he changes gears and he says, "Our mouth has spoken freely to you, O Corinthians. Our heart is open wide." This is an interesting thing for Paul to say here. And I believe here that Paul is pleading with them from the bottom of his heart. He tells them all those things. And then he says here, my heart is open wide. Open wide. This is a group that he spent a year and a half with. This is a group he has left. He's heard reports about. He sent them letters. They responded. And he's sending it back to them. This is a group of people that he cares for deeply. And the things that he's telling them are things that he thinks is going to help them. And then help them do what? What is he, at the end of the day, what is he trying to help them do? Get to heaven. And he says, I'm coming to you from the bottom of my heart. I am pleading with you. I am coming here, speaking to you, and trying to get you to understand these things. I like that about Paul and his message, because he's not speaking to them, berating them over the head. He's not beating them down. He's not telling them how awesome he is and how terrible they are. He is pleading with them. And so think about you in your life. Would you rather have somebody plead with you from the bottom of your heart or hit you over the head with a sledgehammer? Brad says both. He needs it. Brad, yeah. Sometimes you need both. Brad's a little hard-headed. That's okay. I think we know, sugar will get you a lot more with people if you care about them. I know, I just forgot his name, but give me 2 seconds here and I'll download it. Man, I'm getting old. I can't believe I do this sometimes. Dr. Pope that preached that preached here in town for a while. He's actually my professor. He's a funny professor. I had him for Hebrews, James, and 1st and 2nd Peter. 3 months. If you know Curtis at all, we covered Hebrews in 2.5 months. We did James in 1 class, and I think we did all of Peter in the 2nd and 3rd class. And I didn't know what my grade was until after. No, I'm kidding. It probably was that bad until the semester was over. I'm like, hey, what did I get in the class? And it was a great class, though. But he talked about how people would come up to him about being overweight. And he said some people come up to him and basically say, you're a fat slob, you need to lose weight. And he said, I didn't react to that. Might have been true, and he said it differently, but he said, I didn't do that. And he said one time his dad was laying in the hospital bed. His dad had struggled with weight too. And he said his dad, was talking to him, and the story, and I'm going to add 2 probably, it's not going to be verbatim, but basically, got his hand and said, son, I've struggled with weight all my life, and it's gotten me sick. You need to lose weight, or you're going to be sick like me. And he said, I responded to that more than the person that just walked up to me and just slapped me in the face. And I wanted to do something about that. And I think that's what Paul's doing here. Paul is pleading with them from the bottom of his heart to do these things and to come out to be with him.
You have to remember this is a fairly young church, right? These people have not been Christians. So this is probably the most appropriate way. If he was talking to somebody who's been Christian 25 or 30 years, you may be a little more direct. Somebody that ain't been in the faith very long, you probably need to approach it a little differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great point. And so he says here, verse 12 then, he goes, you are not restrained by us, but you are restrained in your own convictions. That's interesting here. Affections for what? First of all, what's their affections that are restraining them? What is he talking about here? Of course, he says, we're not restraining you. You're restraining yourself by these affections. What are these affections?
The things that take them away from their Christian life, basically.
Well, he says they're restraining them, these affections. You think it's the things that are taking them away? Anybody else? Yeah. And so the question here we ask ourselves is what restrains you? Clearly things are restraining them. Paul says, it's not us. We're not restraining you. What is restraining them? And so we have to look at our own self. Is there something that's restraining us? And then notice this is building up to something. These are restraints, things that are getting there. He's building a case step by step. Paul would have been a very good attorney. He writes well. He's building his case here. So we're talking about being restrained, these affections, things that are there. And so are there things in your life? Are there things that are restraining you, that are preventing you or keeping you or doing things? He says it's not us. We're not doing this. These affections. And he says in verse 13 then, he goes, now in a like exchange, I speak to you as children. Open wide to us also. Speak to you as children. Well, that's interesting. Jesus talks about, be like little children. But now Paul is talking to them like children. Do you think Paul is talking down to them? Like, I'm awesome, I'm like a father and you're children? I'm getting a lot of head shaking. Okay, I think you're right. I don't think that's what he's doing. And so let me ask this question. How do you speak to children?
Speak on their level.
Speak on their level. Okay, how else?
Use a general approach at first, and then you have to shift gears if necessary.
Okay. Be more firm, gentle, and then firm. All right, anybody else? Honest with children. Yep.
Have to speak in a way that they understand.
You don't deal with any children, do you? You have to do how they understand it. You have to do it in a level. So I'm kind of setting you up here because I really thought about this. And so when I'm speaking to somebody else's kids, I speak to them differently. Right? So I'm going to ask you another question. How do you speak to your children? Not children, but your children.
Depends on the situation. If you've had this conversation 15 times, a little different than if you're correcting them and out of love, because a lot of times they may not know what you already know, the danger that they may be in.
Okay. I want to go in a different direction, though. Think about your children. What did you want for your children? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Usually, we expect differently from your own children. Your expectations way up here. I can't believe that we did this. When they may be ignorant to the fact whatever you're talking about.
Yeah, so I used to work on houses with my father. and he had Amish guys and other guys that worked for him, and I hated every single minute of it because he busted my butt from the morning I got up to the night and never said a word to anybody else. I never could, never could. You're my son. That's why. I'm like, well, you know what? It'd be nice if you could ride somebody else all day long. You know. Ex- expect expectations. A parent to a child, you want your child. He did that because he wanted me to be the best. He wanted me to be a better than the people that work for him. He wanted me to grow. He wanted me to learn. Paul, I think that's what Paul. These are like his children. Paul didn't, as far as I know, Paul never got married, had any children. These are like he cares for them deeply in a different way. I like all y'all's kids, but I want my kids. It's very personal. I'm working every day to make sure my kids are successful.
I have one thing, Gerald. It may very well be that your dad wanted you to be better than people. Same with Paul.
Yeah.
Not just better, but better
And you're onto something there because Paul kept referencing himself as being a sinner, the worst sinner of all. He says that they were sinners, but he says, and I was the worst. Chief. And so I think here he's saying, I'm speaking to you. This is a loving way. I care for you. I want you to be successful. I'm speaking you to a father to their children. I want the best for you. And that's why I'm writing this to you. I'm coming to you from the bottom of my heart as a father to a child. And I'm doing this because I want the best for you. Isn't that really neat? I mean, is that not really neat from Paul?
You also want to try to relate to them too. Obviously, I don't have my own kids yet, but
You can't make children comments then. Sorry. Oh, I'm kidding.
like my parents, what they try to do for Ethan and I is like relate to us. You know, anytime we made a mistake or anytime we did something, they would always be like, "We understand because we were once kids too." You know, they may not have done the exact same thing we did, but they were once kids. They were once children just like us. So they understood and they were able to relate to us in that way. So we need to be able to do that.
That's a great point, and it reminds me of funny. Me making that statement reminds me of a funny story. Stephanie and I have a friend, and I don't know. He's probably 21, 22, whatever. He's becoming a preacher. I'm not going to tell you who he is. And they're like 22 years old. He preached a sermon on how to raise kids, and I'm sure, being on this side of it, I'm sure there were a lot of people who had a lot of grace with him that day in the pulpit about that. Yes, you can go to the scriptures and they tell you what to do, but you need a little life experience.
You know, I see in this context, because we love our children unconditionally.
Yep.
It seems like that's what Paul has for these people. And in the context, he's saying, look, if there's a gap in our affection, it's on you, because it's not with me. I love you wholeheartedly. And if you don't love me wholeheartedly, that's on you, because I love you. Now, what that tells me is that we can develop that love for brethren, but we can also endure it if it's not reciprocated. That we can still have this affection, even if the relationship is not harmonious. He's teaching us that you still have love. You still have love for them, even if they don't appreciate it or recognize it.
Yep.
And that's how God is with us.
Yep. Yes, Johnny.
You talk to your children different when they're young than you do once they reach the age of accountability. You try to talk to them about honesty, how to work for what you get when they're younger. When they get older, you talk to them about, do you realize what you done was wrong, or do you think it's wrong simply because you got caught? So you have to talk to children different depending on what age level they're in.
And it's interesting. Paul does that. He talks about those that are on milk and those that are on meat, and he knows the difference between that. And that goes. That's great. And I agree definitely.
You also have to be aware that you can't, like, when you're speaking to them, you can't talk to them as if you're better than them.
Yep.
You have to be like, you can't just say to them, well, why can't you be like me? You have to talk to them.
So if you're sitting down with your parents, think back. That's a long time ago, Dale. Can you think back that far? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Dale. And your parents are telling you they love you, and they're telling you how much they love you and they appreciate you, and you're sitting down with them, their arms around you. What's about to happen? It's about to happen, right? Oh no. Do not be bound together with unbelievers. For what partnership have righteousness and lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? This is tough. I love you. My heart's there. But guys, you can't do this. And so he begins to tell them this next few verses is going to be tough for them. It's tough for us. And so he starts off saying, do not be bound together with unbelievers. We've seen it as unequally yoked. And their reference would have been a donkey and an ox. I don't know if that's a great picture of that, but being bound to someone or being bound to an unbeliever. He says, do not be bound together with an unbeliever. It's pretty straightforward of what he's wanting to do there. I know that I've had, when I was working, sometimes I'd have to pull, and Dad would get we'd have a rope, and me and my brother would be on the other side, and we'd pull. And you can tell the difference if both of you, one will pull more than the other. I mean, you can tell it if you're not pulling your part. Immediately, you'll know, and they'll be hollering at you. And so here, I get that when you have one or the other, or being bound or chained over to something is something you can't get away from. And so let's talk about this. What does this mean to you? My wife. Oh my goodness. All right, Steph, take it away. Okay, Dale, you.
The first thing that comes to mind to me is association. You said not to be bound to somebody, but who we associate with. If we associate with Christians too much, we pull away from God. This is really the beginning here all the way to the end of the chapter. It's all one concept there.
Yeah.
You read that, you understand it a little bit better. This remember this. He was hard on them that first letter. Now he's coming back and tells them how much he really loves them, which they may not have got from the first chapter, first book of it, and so this second letter, he's letting them know, yes, I truly do love you and everything like that. And there's a couple of other things too. You have some people coming in and just tearing me all apart with that. And that's not true. So he's telling them who he's going to associate with.
Yeah.
If you were still associated with those out in the world, those people, those unbelievers, they're going to pull you back. You're not going to go forward, you're going to go backward. And he's trying to encourage them to say, look, what's your reward? What are you looking forward to? Don't go back to the old stuff.
Yeah, so we got two groups here, right? If you've got unbelievers, don't be bound to them, then that means you've got what? You got believers. So we got believers and unbelievers. And so he says here, don't be bound together. So that means we have the believers that have come out of the world. They're now believers. And he's saying, don't be bound back to them. There's a sermon I have about don't be deceived. Paul says a lot of don't be deceived. But what is one don't be deceived that goes in line with this one? Do what? Yeah, bad company corrupts good morals, or the whatever translation there. Bad company corrupts good morals. Paul, he says a lot about this very topic. I talk about coal mines a lot here, I guess because I live in Kentucky now. I didn't know about coal mines. I lived in Tennessee, but I'm here now. You know, you have a white suit on and you go in a coal mine. It's going to get something on it. I'm pretty confident. If I put a white suit on and go from my bedroom to the door out of my bedroom, I'm going to get something on it. But you know, this concept of being around them. Who is going to influence whom? And Paul tells us that because he says, "Don't be deceived. It will happen." So, oh no, I'm stronger. Paul says, "Don't be deceived." Okay. Now, believer and unbeliever. I'm going to open a can of worms up here. And if I do anything that's inappropriate or wrong, I'm repenting right now. What is an unbeliever and what is a believer? I'm debating if I'm going to say the words I want to say in here. I haven't decided yet, so I'm going to ask that question. What is a believer? What is a believer? That's what you're going to do. Are there believers? Well, you go ahead. I'm going to let people make comments before I get myself in a hole.
Well, the word believe, of course, comes from the word pistis. And pistos is the verb form of that. This word, unbelievers, is apistos. A means without, and pistos, faith. So those without faith is what it means in the literal term. Now, there may be interpretations of what that can include, what it can mean, but that's the literal meaning of that word.
Well, I've decided not to go down the path I want to go. Let's keep going. I want to keep my job. I might not keep my job, so let's keep going. Do not be bound together with unbelievers, for what partnership have righteousness and lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? We're going to focus on this part right here. Righteousness and lawlessness. So I put somebody handcuffed. I don't know, it's the best image I can come up with. And then I put a gavel there for righteousness. Do law-abiding citizens hang out in jail cells for long periods of time? We may visit. Okay? No, that's pretty common. Believers and righteous people aren't criminals. There are criminals, and then there are people who aren't criminals. There are people who are locked up in prison, and there are people who are not locked up in prison. Okay? I can't think of the last time I hung out at a prison. You know why I can't think of that? Because I never have hung out at a prison. I've never been in prison. It doesn't mean you can't be a Christian if you've been there, but I'm just saying, typically, that's not where we hang out. There are places I don't hang out. I don't hang out in locations where lots of evil things are going on. Because evil things are going on there. And righteous people don't hang out, aren't in places where unlawlessness is going on. Believer, unbeliever, righteous, unlawlessness. You see how we're building up here? If we're hanging out with people who are criminals, and they're our friends, we're hanging out with them every day, and they're criminals,
It does make it more difficult for us to be righteous. Like in 1 Peter 4, it talks about if the righteous do things difficult, but we're scared of the thing. Where does the ungodly and the sinner, where does that leave them?
You know, funny enough, I got a couple of friends that are police officers, and I actually feel sorry for police officers that are Christians because they're around criminals all day long, every day. And when you're around criminals all day long, every day, you don't trust anybody. You think everybody's a liar because when you pull somebody over or you go up to, or you have drugs. No, I mean, everybody you talk to as a cop tells you that they haven't committed whatever. I mean, seriously, I mean, it really works on your psyche. I joke with him about that. I mean, because you just program not to trust or believe anything until it's verified. And I always laugh sometimes when I used to get pulled over. Um, it's been a few days, but they always come up. And y'all recall when you get pulled over, most of the guys, and they're not being mean, they treat you like a criminal, and it's not because they're around criminals all the time. And I wonder how much that rubs off. I mean, it just wears on them. And I see that. I think you can be a Christian and be a police. I'm not saying you can't, but you see the point I'm making. You're around them all the time, and it desensitizes you, and you're just, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy here. And so I can see that. What partnership do people who are righteous have with those who are criminals? And I think we'd all agree, none. That doesn't make any sense. And then he goes on to say, what fellowship has light with darkness? I love the earth and seeing how the earth rotates and the light. There is dark and then there is light. As the sun comes up across the earth, the light is racing toward the dark and the dark is racing away. The dark and light never mix. It's either light outside or it's dark outside. And you can see in this picture, right there in Europe, you can see the lights that are on in the top right. No darkness there because there's light. Where there is light, there is no darkness. And then I put oil and water here. Oil and water won't mix. There's a lot of old farmer tricks. You got, water in your oil, or you don't want that. But if you got it, you just pull the plug out at the bottom. And you let the water come out, and when you start seeing oil, you put it back in. And you've drained all the oil off, right? Am I wrong, Bruce? I mean, there are little tricks like that to be able to, because it will not mix. It does not mix. And so he's making this example. Light and darkness do not mix. Criminals and righteous people do not mix. And I'm giving you another example. Oil and water do not mix. So when he says, don't be bound together with unbelievers, what is he trying to make the point here? What's the point he's trying to make?
Would it have something to do with idolatry? Because that is a big part of their society. And he's already told them in the first letter that you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of Eden. So, I mean, if that was a bigger threat to them, than we can relate to in terms of idolatry.
Yeah.
But these temples were real. And they did indeed, like socially or in business, if you wanted a part of that economy, you had to get to the Senate and participate.
Right. Yeah, in the next section he's going to talk more about that. Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's going to be. But here, what's the overarching theme about things mixing together? They don't. You can't mix them. And so, Johnny, go ahead.
I hate to use an example.
Use it.
But these words were very important to me after I became a Christian. I went to playing fast pitch softball with men at 14, 15 years old. So what went along with that was drinking beer. I was baptized in June 1982, and I played fast pitch softball for another three years or so. But I was still around that drinking the beer. I didn't drink one, but I quit playing, as I say, in my prime because as a Christian, you can't be around that all the time and be a Christian. That's just a personal example. Sometimes you have to make decisions with the real close friends you have to do the right thing.
Yeah, good example. Yeah, yeah, very good point. Absolutely. Let me break this down a different way. I know some sports fans out there, some crazy ones. So Yankees fans, I know a lot of crazy Yankee fans. And so what does a Yankees fan wear? Pinstripes, Yankee jersey, Yankee hat, Yankee shoes. They watch Yankee games. They talk the Yankee language. They know all the Yankee players. They know all the old Yankee players. They know everything there is about the Yankees. They know the Yankees. Will a Yankees fan, for those sports fans out here, will a Yankees, my good friend back here in the back, would a true Yankees fan wear my Boston Red Sox sweatshirt I got? A Yankees fan will not be bound to any Boston Red Sox clothing. They hate it. They despise it. A Red Sox fan has nothing in common with a Yankees fan. A Christian whose main goal is to get to heaven, and that's all they're thinking about, and their whole life is about doing that and getting other people there, and they've transformed their life. Romans, sweetheart, 12. I use Hebrews last class. Romans 12, 1 and 2. This is what they do. This is what they're about. There's no way they'd even want to be around unbelievers. It makes no sense. Their goal is not to get to heaven. Their goal is not to do what is good. Their goal is not to be righteous. Their goal is not to do these things. And so they have nothing in common anymore.
Well, he reminded them back in his first letter, in 1 Corinthians 6, talking about, um, do you not know the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? And he gave that list. He's like, and such were some of you. So, he's again reminding them of where you were. This is where you want to be going. You were washed. You were sanctified. You were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God. So, don't go back. Don't be trying to hang on to, the betwixt and between. And like you mentioned, don't be conformed. Don't be taking the form of this. Be transformed. Go across the form. Change yourself.
Yep. Yep. Right here.
She stole my point.
She stole your point. Good.
What I was going to say was that the whole list of things that we are to be as Christians is just above this, right? We're set apart. We have affliction. We have tribulation. And then he goes through all these things that are supposed to be, through honor, dishonor. We look like imposters, though we're the truth. And those are things that people can see. And what he's saying is, you're trying to blend back in. You're trying to mix back in with him. You can't do it. And he can see that. He's saying in the previous verse that my heart's open to you, but I can see that your heart's not open to me. And it's because you guys are trying to blend back into these other people, back into this other group.
Yeah.
Yeah. Need to have people that have you can see that a true Christian has an open heart. Will love in a loving way. When you're doing good, they're there to encourage you and uplift you. When they see that your affections are slipping away, they come and talk to you in a loving manner to let you know. And it should be to let you know, and it should be like an eye opener for you to come back and to be better and to realize the things of this earth is just fleeting, it's passing away, it's a vapor. We're only here for a temporary amount of time. The person of the world is not going to be open to you. They're not going to be open-hearted to you. They're not going to be telling you open. They're going to keep telling you the things of the world is so much better. And I kind of lost where I was going to go.
That's okay. If good, good.
You have been really open with me. But if you're a light, if you surround yourself with the world, I kind of got that. If you're a light and you're going to surround yourself with the world, your light is surrounded by darkness. If you're surrounded by darkness, that light can't stay lit for very long. But we need to have our fellowship, have our things to build up, to prepare
show the world that we are different. When we go out there, we shouldn't be the only light that's there. But when they see us, they should see that we are not like the world. We are totally different. And hopefully that we can be open in a loving way too, where they won't mock us or anything. They don't want to ask questions. They might start to mock us, but as they're mocking us, they actually start to have real questions. So we can have real talks, but they should see it in our words and deeds. In order for that, but we should have all this going in like an open. We should have an openness to be with this, but in a loving way, and help show and guide their affections away from the world to God.
Yeah, and one comment up here, I'm going to say one other thing. If you find yourself that you have more in common with the unbeliever than the believer, then you need to evaluate that. If you find yourself having more in common with the unbeliever than the believer, then we've got some problems. Go ahead.
You ask, what happens in this situation? There's no longer a partnership. It's destroyed. You know? I'll live through that. And it's more than just spiritual. They can destroy your perspective, your emotions. And it can be hard to shine a light when you're surrounded by darkness. You can't overcome it though.
Yep. Yep. You can. You can. It's your family. You can overcome.
It's difficult.
Absolutely. Yep. And it gets complicated once you get into that situation where you're bound with someone who isn't. It's difficult, and that's why he's giving that, telling you not to, because it becomes difficult. It is, and it's something that's difficult. And so he makes this even more plain for them. He goes, "Come on, guys. What harmony has Christ with?" And he uses the word Balaam or Satan or Baal or whatever here. What is a believer in common with an unbeliever? I'm not blaspheming here, but if you walk by the movie theater and Jesus and Satan were having popcorn and Coke and they're watching the movie and they're hanging out together, what would you think?
Something's wrong with this picture.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he's saying here. Jesus and Satan aren't having birthday parties together. They're not having popcorn parties. They're not going on trips. He goes, what harmony do they have? They don't have any harmony. There is no harmony.
And that's what God is saying is they can't have harmony. It is impossible for these two to exist together. It is night and day. It is light and dark. You cannot have one with the other. It is impossible. It is against God's very nature to have that relationship.
And he uses the word believer and unbeliever. It can't. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work. And in time's sake, I've got this last verse here. Or what agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are a temple of living God, just as God said, I dwell in them and they walk among me. I am their God and they shall be my people. If you went to the temple and they were in the temple, they had a whole section to all the gods and they were sacrificing to them, would that make any sense? He's saying, yeah, the temple of God doesn't do that. Because it is the temple to the Jehovah God. It is not the temple to the Jehovah God and 97 other gods. And you can worship how you want to here, and then you can worship how you want to over there. It's one worship. And then that's when he says, for the temple of the living God, just as God said, I dwell in them, and they walk among them, and I am there with God, and they shall be my people. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the temple of God. We are the holy temple of God. And that's where he has built his case to explain that to us. We can't be idol sacrificing. We can't be touching all this stuff. We don't hang out. We don't do this. We're not part of that. And is he saying we can never be around people who are unbelievers?
It's our job to try to convince them that they need to change stuff, that they need to come to Jesus before it's too late to say.
There you go, Lewis.
And Jesus prayed not to take the disciples out of the world, but to take them from the world. And that's the same thing.
So don't take this too far. He's saying don't be bound to them. Doesn't say you're not going to be around them. You can't talk to them. Bound is different. We have to live in the world. I work with a lot of people, trying to be an influence on them every day. They influence me a little bit every once in a while, and I hit my head against my desk. But other than that, but we have to be the temple every day, shining our light. Yep. Yep.
We know Jesus, he would be found where? And you would have people looking down at him with all these first things a lot of people would go to being sinners, right? That's who we would go talk to.
That's not being bound to him, that's going to him. Yep.
And what you were talking about, what's different as light and darkness, or how could you do this in the temple? And Ezekiel, that's what they were doing. You know, the picture of going to the inner court. These people have their backs turned, they were worshiping the sun. So that's something that did happen. It's impossible for us to believe, but that's how far away they have gotten from the truth.
Yep.
They were turning their back to the truth, and they were bowing down to the sun.
And in context here, and I don't know if there's a bell being rung or whatever, but it's 15 till. Is that he says basically, you can't on Saturday go do all your sacrifices to Baal and the sun god and the 87 other gods and do all that and hang out with everybody and we're all buddies and we're worshiping together. And then on Sunday, you go to the wherever you meet with the Christians and everybody's high-fiving. And that's not going to work. It doesn't work. It's just not how it works. A Christian wouldn't do that. That's just not what you would do. All right, you're ready for chapter 7 on Sunday. All right, awesome. Thank you.